Hey, Bills Mafia. We know there's only one topic every day. All Bills, all the time. And now Matt Bovee and Sal Capaccio are going really deep, talking Bills all year long, because it's always game day in Buffalo.
Well, another game, another player of the week honor for the Buffalo Bills. No surprise, Josh Allen gets this one, Matt. Welcome to It's Always Game Day in Buffalo, everybody. The guy deserved it, obviously, with the way he played on Monday night against the Jacksonville Jaguars. But 3 straight weeks of a Buffalo Bills player being named a player of the week on either side of the ball just speaks to the general way of how they're playing as a team now at 3-0.
Yeah, it shows balance. Actually, that was what I talked about on the news on Wednesday at 5 o'clock. It was like, when you've won this award 3 weeks in a row and you've gotten it done on both sides of the ball, it shows you that you can win a lot of different ways. And I think that's what it says about the Bills. Week 1, they get a dominant performance from Greg Rousseau, really changed the game in the second half. Week 2, James Cook absolutely goes off. And then week 3, Josh Allen does Josh Allen things. They've got talent on both sides, and they're off to a really, really great start because of both the offense and defense. It's not just because of one side of the ball.
Now, this game coming up against the Baltimore Ravens, which we can dig into here, is going to be a bit different than Jacksonville because totally different team. Now, obviously, you could say maybe the Jaguars are just kind of not even playing that well talent-wise. What I mean is just schematically even. The Jags are a very heavy man-to-man team. Josh Allen just carved them up. They couldn't even get out of man-to-man. They didn't really, and Josh made them pay for it. This is a bit of a different team. This is more of a zone team. They don't blitz that much. The Bills are going to have to be, and Josh is going to have to be more patient against this particular team. They present a much different challenge. So you talk about winning different ways. You're going to have to pivot and win a totally different way on that side of the ball, I think, this week, even as opposed to last week.
Yeah, definitely. And after what the Bills did with a lot of man coverage against them and with the Jags game, I don't think they're going to see man coverage much for the remainder of the year. I know that this league is going more towards teams really leaning into zone coverage. So this is not like some outlier. It's not like the Ravens do things completely different than a lot of other teams. They just have a lot of talent on the defensive side of the ball. So I agree with you. Josh Allen is going to have to be patient. The one thing to the Bills' advantage, now, I don't want to bite my tongue, the Ravens pass rush has not been as impressive as it has been in years past. So he might have a little bit more time. And also the Bills' offensive line has played very, very well. And if you give Josh Allen time, he will make plays, regardless of what talents the defenses have and what kind of coverages that they're playing. So it is still a Ravens defense, but it might not have the same level of bite as some of the Ravens defenses in recent memory.
Yeah, and to underscore that, so the Ravens are 17th in the league. They're ranked 17th in sacks per pass attempt. What they're very good at is stopping the run. They're basically the best team in the league at stopping the run. One of the things that's happened, though, because they haven't been able to get to the passer, I'm going to show you the stat. I'm going to throw it up on the screen right now. Check this out. For everybody who can see it there, the Baltimore Ravens are near the bottom, though, in total pass defense. And you can see the numbers right there. They're first in offense. First in rushing yards per play against, first in rushing yards per game against, but last in passing yards per game and 28th in passing yards per play. So while they do play a lot of zone defense, it's not necessarily a man-to-man coverage scheme, like we just said. It is a scheme that might lend itself, though, because they can't get home to the passer, as the Bills may be having some opportunities down the field. I'll give you one more stat. I tweeted this out yesterday, actually. The Buffalo Bills have only given up 4 pass plays of 20 or more yards, Matt. That's third fewest in the league, tied for it.
Wow.
The Ravens have already given up 16 pass plays of 20 or more yards. That's the most in the NFL.
That's really interesting. I mean, you can look at all of those numbers and they all paint a story, but you can also look at just the baseline numbers and see that they are a defense that is not playing up to the standard that we have known to expect when it comes to the Baltimore Ravens. Week 1, they give up 27 points to the Chiefs. Now you go, okay, it's the Chiefs, but 27 points in week 1, there's a lot of moving parts. It usually takes the offense a little bit to get up to speed. That's not a great defensive day. How do they follow it up? Well, the next week, they allow 26 points to Gardner Minshew and the Las Vegas Raiders, and they do that at home. And then last week, week 3, on the road, they give up 25 points to the Cowboys. Now, the asterisk there is that most of those points came in the fourth quarter. They really did a good job of shutting down the Cowboys in the first 3 quarters of the game, but that's another part of the story of the Ravens. It's They don't play well right now at the end of games. And for the Bills, if you're in a close game, or even if you're trailing a little bit, I still think that they in their minds will be like, okay, we can come back. Like, this team lets teams back into games if the Bills are in that position. They obviously don't want to be. They want to be out in front as much as humanly possible. But if it's a close game, which the Bills always play in, either they blow teams out or it's a very close game, this one should come down to the wire.
And let's flip it out over to the other side of the ball, where the Ravens are actually a carbon copy on the offensive side. They're tremendous at running the ball. They're first in the league, and that's what happens when you have Derrick Henry. And I will tell you, I mean, they of course they played Dallas last week, and Dallas can't seem to stop anybody
Dallas
on the
can't
ground.
Stop the run at all.
So that really plays into what the Ravens want to do. But make no mistake, we know the Ravens can run the ball. They have Derrick Henry, they have Lamar Jackson, they have Justice Hill. They're running the ball over 200 yards a game. That's overall second in the NFL. Only to the Green Bay Packers have been better. And by the way, though, they are at a 5.87 clip yards per carry, which is amazing. That's astronomical. That is first in the league. They're also throwing the ball really well, though. They do have the reigning MVP, Lamar Jackson. They present a lot of problems on the offensive side for them and the defensive side for the Bills. That's where the Bills are going to have to make sure here in this one. And how confident, I guess I'll ask you, how confident are you in the Bills being able to slow down that vaunted running game for the Ravens?
Well, there's been a clip about their former defensive coordinator Mike McDonald talking about how defenses are playing in the NFL. Yeah. And I think a lot about what the Bills have done for all of these years. It's basically, if you're going to play high safeties, you better be able to stop the run. And if you can stop the run, that really gives you some favorable matchups on that side of the ball. So a lot of this will come down to me. Can you keep Lamar contained? Derrick Henry is going to get his 4.5, 5 yards a clip. It's just going to happen. I don't even think Derrick Henry is still the caliber that he was a couple years ago. He's had big games against the Bills. They've also done a really good job against Derrick Henry in the past. The personnel, though, has completely changed. To me, the numbers are a bit inflated because of Lamar. Lamar breaks off a couple big runs every single game, and I think that kind of boosts it up. So that, to me, is like, okay, are you going to be able to keep Lamar in the pocket, not let him get out and escape? Because if he does that, they are going to make big plays. It is not a matter of if it happens. It's a matter of when it happens. This team is a little bit like the Bills. They're good defensively. They've got a couple flaws, and they're good offensively. It's the toughest game they've played so far, and it's not even close. They are so much more talented than the other teams the Bills have played.
Well, the Bills are dealing with some injuries, and so are the Ravens, and really they're on that side of the ball. It's Ravens offense, it's Bills defense. We heard from Sean McDermott on Wednesday. He gave us an update on, and even kind of a timeline, which is kind of interesting, right? Normally he doesn't do that, on both Terrell Bernard and Taron Johnson. They're ruled out of this game. But he did say normally it's a 2.5 to 4 week range, or they're looking at that. That's why they didn't put either on IR. So you're looking at the third missed game now coming up for Taron Johnson after he got hurt. Third missed game and total missed game. He got hurt in the game one, and this will be week 2, 3, 4, and the second for Terrell Bernard. Also, though, Kyer Elam dealing with a neck injury, so we'll see how that shakes out. So before I get to the Ravens injuries, are the Bills equipped with their backup linebackers, from what you've seen from Balen Spector and Dorian Williams, to handle everything the Ravens are going to throw at them?
No, they're not perfectly equipped, but I don't think they would be perfectly equipped with a fully loaded defense. The Ravens are a good team, and they're going to make plays. This is going to come down to, can the Bills make more big plays in this game? I think the Bills will be fine. They're coached so well on defense that covers up a lot of lack of talent or guys that are missing. They've done an incredible job of that. But I don't think that this is a game where you're just going to go into it and you're going to be like, okay, this is what we got to do to shut them down. I think it's going to be, they're going to make big plays. You just got to make more big plays. I've liked what I've seen from Dorian Williams. Cam Lewis had a good start. Week 3, there were a couple moments when you're like, okay, like, I don't know if Taron Johnson, you're like, okay, I think Taron Johnson might make that play or do something a little bit better. But I think that the defense will be fine. But I think that the Ravens will get the better of them at times. That's totally normal and to be expected.
My read on the linebackers in this game against the Ravens is just that you're not going to be totally equipped. But I would say Balen Spector and Dorian Williams are good against the run. Like, they're going to go straight ahead, and they're going to see the ball, and they're going to go make a tackle on it. What worries me about them in this game, last game I was worried about the Jags attacking them through the air. And look, the Jags had to kind of get out of their game plan. Nothing was going right. They didn't really have a chance maybe to stick with their game plan, but they still did a good job when called upon. The thing that worries me in this game, I think they're very good at, hey, you see Derrick Henry, you go tackle him. They're going to be able to do that. But what about when Lamar puts it in and takes it out, and you have all this motion going and playing with their eyes. That's where I get a little concerned, because the Ravens are going to do a lot of that against the Bills on Sunday.
Yeah, they do a lot of window dressing, and they make it really tough on you as a defense. And that's one of the things that I think I don't want to say criticized the Bills' young linebackers for, because it's to be expected. They're young linebackers and they don't have a lot of starts under their belt. Sometimes they're a little bit too quick to commit, which is why they have made big plays in run coverage, but sometimes why they get taken advantage of when they are passing, when the team is passing against them. So that's going to be what the Bills have to try and figure out, because I do think that the Ravens will absolutely try and attack the middle of the field. That's just the way the Bills defense is built. You're not going to take a ton of shots against Christian Benford and Russell Douglas. You're just not. So you're going to try and move Zay Flowers all over the place, or you're going to really utilize your two tight ends that they use a lot with Likely and Andrews and try and win in the middle of the field. And Lamar is good at doing that. It's just about, can the Bills make a big play or two to kind of kill the momentum?
We're recording here on Wednesday, so obviously there's still a few days left before the game, but a little concern on the Ravens side. 3 starting offensive linemen did not practice on Wednesday. Guard Daniel Faalele, center, actually he was a full participant, sorry. Center Tyler Linderbaum did not practice. Tackle Patrick McCarry did not practice, and guard Andrew Voorhees did not practice. Now, all of them apparently played in the entire game on Sunday. So you'd think they're probably going to be good enough to play, but these were not veteran rest days. They're all listed with injuries. And John Harbaugh said, it's a long season. Everybody's dealing with things. We're no different than anybody else. So you don't really know what their situation is. I mean, just reading from the outside looking in, you'd probably expect them to play, but it is a concern for them for maybe the most concerning group anyway, going into the year for the Baltimore Ravens, which is their offensive line after all the turnover they had. And here come the Buffalo Bills, who have been good at getting after the passer.
Yeah, I mean, that could be a mismatch for the Bills, and it's going to have to be, because if you can get to Lamar and you cannot let him escape the pocket, obviously it becomes a much more manageable task in stopping him. Need a big game. The nice thing for the Bills is that they've got a couple guys who are they have the skill sets to be able to keep Lamar inside the pocket and not let him break contain. Greg Rousseau is very good at that. AJ Epinesa is getting better at that. Actually, Casey Tuhill is pretty good at that also. So I think that they've got a potential mismatch there. I think that's one of the ways the Bills could win this game, is if their defensive line can definitely beat the Ravens offensive line. I think that will allow for them to, get to Lamar a couple times and maybe make him force a couple bad plays or a couple bad throws.
On Wednesday, Josh Allen was asked about some comments he made after the game on Monday night.
All right, so we were out at practice on Wednesday. Now, I want to say this was a big talking point, not locally. If you're somebody who follows like strictly Bills beat reporters or people who cover the team, this was not something that was really being talked about locally. Nationally, though, wake up on Tuesday morning after the Bills game against the Jags. They're showing the highlights of how the Bills score 47 points. And then they use the clip after the game of Josh Allen saying, we've got a lot of really great players in this room. It's really, really nice to have guys who are totally comfortable and cool with not getting the ball thrown their way, or they're not thinking about stats. Now, I think that this was Josh trying to elevate his team and be like, all this talk about a number one wide receiver, we got a bunch of guys who can play football. But it was not taken that way because, of course, you've got guys on national television, Stephen A. Smith, Marcus Spears, a couple other people saying that this was a shot at Stefon Diggs. Now, completely unprompted at practice on Wednesday, when talking to reporters, Josh Allen made this comment.
Again, I'm not trying to tear down anybody. I've loved everybody that I've played with, and you don't have to tear other people down to build each other up. And, we're building each other up right now, and that's all we're trying to do. We're trying to stay together as a team, and we're really caring about each other, and everybody in this building's got that feeling. You know what I mean. You know what I mean. Whether it's former players, yeah. And again, I love 14. I still do. But everyone wants to keep making this thing a thing, and we're so focused on what's going on inside of our building, and that's the only thing that we're caring about right now.
Drama. But not really. Like, he's pouring cold water on it, right?
So specifically, he's asked, so everybody knows, about Stefon Diggs, right? And like, if he's talking about Stefon Diggs, I don't even know if he was asked, but he's clarifying that because he said right there, I love 14, which by the way is number 1 now, I believe, in Houston, right?
The
For the
second,
Texans.
so the second half of that, which was our colleague Matt Perino, was basically saying, "Well, what do you mean?" And he then directs Josh himself.
So he unprompted.
Directed it towards Stefon Diggs. But the first question was about the whole, you've got all these guys who don't ask for the ball all the time and all that stuff. And that's where he eventually took it. So nobody specifically asked about Stefon Diggs until he started to give that answer. And then there was the clarification put into it.
Okay, you can believe, and as I do, that Josh is all about his guys and elevating them. There's no doubt. But when you heard that on Monday night, did you not for 1 second think, oh man, is that something like you don't want to go there, but doesn't your brain go there for a second? Think if he's thinking about Stefon Diggs or
with
in
him,
some way?
With him, no. With him, I don't, because he is so polished and PR trained and savvy. I'm not saying I want
wait, and he is, I agree. Then he would know that that's going to be construed that way by saying that.
I think so, but I think it was him kind of having his words. What he was trying to convey is look, guys, we were all in this together. Everything is great. And then it kind of got tangled into something that he didn't intend. I don't think Josh is, I don't want to say dumb enough, because that's not the way it should be said. But I don't think Josh would ever stir the pot unintentionally,
Agreed.
Especially when they are playing that team in a week and a half.
Yeah.
I think this was partially his way, because the initial response was pretty unprompted and he just kind of said it. I think this was his way of trying to nip this in the bud until we get through the next week. And then, of course, it'll be a conversation next week. But I think he was trying to, kind of narrow the focus back to like, I don't want to talk about this right now, guys. Like, we got a really hard game coming up.
Listen, I agree with all that. But I also understand how people could make that connection. I guess that's how I want to say it. And we didn't, and like you said, we didn't even go there locally because I think we all kind of understand that that's just not Josh's nature. He's not going to do that. He's not meaning it that way. But nationally, people who aren't as close to it, people can't see the forest through the trees, are probably going to do that. And I understand from that standpoint. I'm glad that he threw some water on it. It is ironic to me that for the last year and a half, 2 years, there's been a lot of things that Stefon Diggs said or tweeted that got very much diagnosed and analyzed. And yet every once in a while he'd come back and he would say the right thing, right? But there were times where he could have and he never did. And it just fueled the fire more.
I am not naive enough. When I say this, I am not naive enough to suggest that there was not drama and there were not a lot of layers to this. I don't believe that for a second. But what I do believe is that Josh was not trying to say that and take a shot at Stefon Diggs after they scored 47 points against the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think that he was just saying like, hey, everyone, look at Khalil Shakir making plays when we throw it to him. Look at what Matt Collins is doing in the run game. Look at all of these guys who are contributing and getting us a 47-point offensive win. Like, look at that. So I do think that there's going to be, this is going to be a story, and it's going to continue to be a story because they were so good together, and it became such a topic of conversation for really like 2 years in a row. So it's going to be something that gets talked about again next week, and it's going to get something that's talked about again the next day after the game. If the Texans win, it'll be, does Josh Allen need Stefon Diggs? If the Bills win, it's that Josh never needed Stefon Diggs. It's messy. It's complicated. It's like a reality TV show mixed into a football game.
And to Stefon Diggs' credit, this year, he's had a couple opportunities to, talk about his time in Buffalo. And he even said once, I believe his quote was something like, you don't have to talk bad about your ex-girlfriend to make your new girlfriend feel good. Something like that, right?
Yeah.
Where I think he's done a nice job since he's been in Houston. And he's always spoken well about Josh Allen. Again, there's been times where maybe he could have defended him a little more when his brother tweeted what he did. He didn't back Josh and just kind of said, well, it's my brother and I can't, help what he tweets. That he could have done a better job of that. There's no doubt. But I think at the end of the day, when we're in Houston a week from Sunday, Josh and Stefon, you know what they're going to do? They're going to meet at midfield and they're going to do a bro hug. And we're going to have a lot of video of that. And people are going to be talking about it. And we're going to put it on Twitter. And you're going to have it on WKBW. And it's going to be, oh, there they are. See, they love each other.
And I agree with everything that you just said. And I think that this is going to be something that gets talked about again in less than a week as we're getting closer to the Texans game. But I do think that the point from what Josh is saying deserves to be talked about.
Okay.
You think that I don't want to say that they're better equipped without a number one wide receiver, because I do not feel that way. But do you feel like this is sustainable? This whole everybody eats
Great
thing
question.
is something that can continue throughout the course of an entire season, because we are looking at it from a very small sample size.
That's the exact question I asked on the radio today on WGR Sports Radio 550. I said to Shope and Bulldog, this is the question. Is it sustainable? Because the way they're doing it right now, they've been able to win. But what happens when teams have film on it? What happens when teams start to game plan more and say, wait a minute, okay, now we see how they're doing this and what they're doing. What can you do to adjust? Look, I think with Josh Allen, you can always overcome. You can always make it work no matter what. I think it's sustainable to a level. I don't think it's necessarily sustainable to this high of a level. They're the number one scoring offense in the league right now, right? And I think to expect 32 points a game, I think it is 32 and a half points a game, to expect that would be a little bit crazy and ridiculous. I don't think that is necessarily sustainable. What I do think is sustainable is still to be a very good offense, a very efficient offense, doing it the way they're doing it. And that's because they have the right trigger man. And so far what we see, the right offensive coordinator to put this whole thing together.
Yeah, I think that there's going to be teams that adjust to what the Bills are doing. And now it's another test for Joe Brady to figure out, can he then readjust and try and catch them off guard again? And I think he's going to do a good job of that, because remember, they had his sample size from last year was longer than 3 games where they had success as a team and as an offense. So there was tape out on him after the first couple games that he coached, and then he was able to adjust. And like in the Cowboys game, for example, they just attacked the run. That's what they did, but they did not have that same game plan for the entire course of the second half of the season. So yeah, I do think it's fair to assume that they're going to take some sort of step back, because they have to. If they don't, it would be a historically amazing offense. And that's not what I'm expecting. But I think if you're the Bills and you have a really good offense and a really good defense, that is a recipe for, shockingly enough, a really good team.
Before we move on to talk a little bit about and answer some questions, Josh brought it up today. Everybody's been bringing it up, but I think we need to bring up ourselves here, the offensive line and the job they've done.
Yep.
And to talk about this point we're talking about now, which is everybody eats. This is impossible without the way the offensive line is blocking in both the run game and the pass game.
Yeah.
And you brought it up on the post-game show about how well the tackles are playing. And I agree with you. I think Deion Dawkins is playing the best football of his career. And I think Spencer Brown is playing the best football of his career, which is amazing to put those two things together. And then that's where you can get the everybody eats, both throwing the ball and even running the ball when you're doing it so well. Give a lot of love and a lot of credit to Aaron Cromer. He's a really good offensive line coach, and give a lot of credit to Brandon Beane and his staff for finding guys that can develop into this system. That being said, by the way, real quickly, Tylon Grable, he's going to miss several weeks. So it looks like Ryan Vandermark will once again become the swing tackle.
Yeah, which is, a loss for the Bills, but Ryan Vandermark is more than capable of stepping in and doing that exact same role. Alec Anderson gets a shout out because they've utilized him a lot and he's played well. David Edwards is another one that a lot of people who have said, like, hey, listen, he has been a really solid piece for them at guard. And considering he was a reserve player, a backup player last year, like, he has a lot of experience in this league. He won a Super Bowl, but I feel like David Edwards has exceeded expectations. And then Connor McGovern makes the move over. And is there a small step back maybe from what Mitch Morse was doing? Sure. But Connor McGovern is young, and I think he's holding down the front or the middle of the offensive line fairly well. As for Osiris Torrance, we haven't really talked about him. Still think he's continuing to become a very good player in this league. It's hard to live up to the expectations of last year because he was just so good. So I think as a whole, the offensive line has been very good. But to me, the thing that stands out is what Sal alluded to. Deion Dawkins and Spencer Brown are playing really, really good football, and Josh Allen and the offense are benefiting because of it.
So we asked you to ask us some questions, and our first question was just about this. So let's get to that now. Eric tweets us at Sal Sports and at Matt_Bove. Where do Deion and Spencer rank in the league as a tackle duo? I don't know where that is, but I'd find it hard right now to say that there are many tackle duos playing better than these two are. Just like I'd say a lot of things about better than, the two corners the Bills have, the way they're playing. But overall, as an offensive line, I think you can confidently as of this moment, put this group in the top 5, at least offensive lines in the league.
I think the fun thing for the Bills and for Bills fans to think about is Spencer Brown is still a player who's going to probably get better. He's still very young. He is ascending, and now the Bills have locked him up for the next several years. Deion Dawkins is now kind of at the prime of his career, but I don't think we're going to hit like some Deion Dawkins wall. I think he is going to be able to do this for a couple more seasons, and that's why I think that they might have built a really, really solid unit, kind of bookended by their tackles for the next couple of years. So I've liked what they've done, and I think that the risk they took in signing Spencer Brown now may pay off because he would have probably gotten a lot more money on the open market after a season like he's having, at least to start.
So I'll let you pick out a couple of questions. I just want to go over one here just to clarify for everyone. Mark David tweets in, and thank you, Mark. The NFL trade deadline is just 5 weeks away. Which position do you think the Bills would benefit from strengthening the most? I actually counted 6 weeks away, I believe, because they changed it this year. And you know what, Mark? My apologies. By the way, you're tweeting. I thought he wrote it's just a few weeks away, so I corrected him and said 6. He said it's 5. I did not mean it like that. I didn't mean to correct you from 5 to 6. I thought you wrote a few. Anyway, the league did change the trade deadline, and this year it is after week 10, I believe. It's after week 9, leading into week 10. That's what it is. So we are still we are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games away from doing that. Matt, I would say that it's way too early to do that. Injuries are going to happen. There's a lot of things to consider. Let's see where this team is in 3, 4 weeks from now, let alone 6.
Any moves that they make will probably mirror some sort of injury that happens between now and then, or anything that's significant that pops up. I still think if nothing changes and they're in the exact same position, at least from a roster standpoint, as they are now in 6 weeks, the most likely addition would be another wide receiver. I don't think that it's something they absolutely have to do. My thought process would be, can you get somebody in here who can contribute more than, let's say, MVS has been able to? And I think that there would be players out there who could do that. So I'm not suggesting you're going to go land a Devontae Adams or Deebo Samuel or like somebody like that, but I do think that they could still go out and add a wide receiver who could help more than some of their depth guys have.
You go ahead. You got one for us or no?
Yeah, I mean, this one is from Chef Rocco, and he says, has Cook done enough to earn a big contract? I don't think so. I think that James Cook has been a very good player. I just fundamentally do not think that you should be paying running backs. I think that there are a lot of guys in this league who are good running backs who you were able to get later in the draft or get with an asset that didn't cost you a ton. There are outliers to that. You've got the Christian McCaffreys, although he's hurt right now. You've got the Saquon Barkleys. Derrick Henry is still going strong. So I think that there are outliers to this, but I would not be comfortable with the Bills giving James Cook like some massive contract extension. If it was a fair deal for both sides, then sure, keep him. But what I think happens is that the Bills use James Cook a lot this year, and then the Bills use James Cook a lot again next year, and then they try and find the next version of James Cook a couple years down the road, or Ray Davis takes on a bigger role. So I think that he's a really good player, and he has exceeded my expectations for him, but I think it's too early to be talking about an extension for him.
100% agree with all of that. Not only do I agree that you just don't pay running backs like that, I think Brandon Beane agrees you don't pay running backs like that. And I don't see the Bills going down that road. Now, he's a really good player and he does a lot for them. So if you can, get him back on a sort of a cheaper deal, you'd like to do that. It's not just, we don't want you anymore. It's you don't pay for running backs in this league. It's not how you win necessarily. Ray Davis is, though, he's going to be 25 in November. By the time Ray Davis is, he's going to be almost 30 years old by the time his rookie contract is up, which is crazy to think about. So I'm not sure it would be him, but I agree. Look what they did with Devin Singletary. Zach Moss, they traded away, but this is what they do, right? They kind of use guys and then let them move on. And that's what this position kind of is in the NFL for a lot of these teams. All right, TJ, what do you see happening with the linebackers when everyone is healthy? Between Milano, Dorian Williams, Balin Spector, Bernard, what's the best way to use them all effectively when they're all healthy and available? Here's my answer for this, Matt. Your starters then are Terrell Bernard and Matt Milano. Yes. Balin Spector's a backup and Dorian Williams is a backup. And they are not getting into the game unless it's either a blowout or, special teams for sure, unless it's either a blowout or an injury.
Yeah, I think Dorian Williams would be the one that if you're going heavy, you would try and get him on the field. Maybe he would be your guy there. But other than that, I don't really even think it's – I'm not dismissing the question at all, but Terrell Bernard and Matt Milano are so good that if they are available, they should be on the field a lot.
Yeah, they're your starters, and they're really good at what they do. So if and when they are healthy and available, they're going back in the lineup and playing.
This is a good question. This is from Marco. I don't want to put you on the spot, but it goes, what's the Bills' biggest advantage in the game against the Ravens, and what's their biggest disadvantage? That's a really good question.
Yeah, and I think we kind of touched on it. I think their biggest advantage is their D line against the Ravens offensive line. Ravens offensive line already had some issues coming into the year, and they're banged up right now, and the Bills D line is playing at a really high level. So I think that's their biggest advantage. Their biggest disadvantage is trying to stop Derrick Henry. I mean, nobody's really able to do it, consistently. The Bills have done a nice job in some games they played. Remember though, down in Tennessee, the long run he had, and he gets loose after a little while, and it's really tough. They wear on you. So I think the biggest disadvantage is simply trying to defend their run.
I think for me, it might be the tight ends because they have two really good tight ends, and the Bills have not played an elite tight end yet. And I know they played Trey McBride the first game of the year, but it was the first game of the year. Marvin Harrison Jr. didn't even do a ton. So I'm not going to, basically the game plan for the Cardinals was let the clock bleed and we're going to run James Conner down your throat. And then we're just going to make plays here. So they didn't have to play against Evan Ingram and against the Jags. I'm not saying that would have made a huge difference, but it would have been another weapon. They have two really good tight ends. So I don't know how the Bills are going to try and plan on stopping them because they use them together a lot. There are a lot of 12 personnel and likely is a mismatch. And Mark Andrews is probably Lamar's favorite target. So that is a potential mismatch for me for the Bills defense.
I don't know if this is a serious question. I'm going to take it serious, but the reason I'm going to bring it up is because I think it's a part of a broader question that people do ask sometimes. CB says, is it better for the team if they lose or win this game?
Yeah, I saw that. I assumed
well, of course it's better if they win the game. I mean, you want to win every game, and it's better if you win. Now, if you're asking at some point, is it better if you get a loss to kind of have that taste and not have the pressure of winning? You can make an argument. That argument doesn't happen until week 12, 13, 14, 15, or 16, something like that, right? I mean, we are nowhere near there right now.
This is a really good question for you specifically. This is from Andrew. How do incentive bonuses like Von Miller's count against the cap?
Okay. So there's two types of incentive bonuses. One is a likely to be earned. One is a not likely to be earned. And based on what he did last year, what a player did the year before, if you have a bonus that does reach what the player produced the year before, that's called likely to be earned, and it counts immediately on the cap. If you have one that's not likely to be earned, so if a guy has, so basically, if 13 sacks, let's say the year before, and he winds up, how do I explain this a little bit? Not likely to be earned is something that he don't think he's going to achieve. It's a better way for me to phrase it. I'm sorry. I'm being very clunky. Let me find the wording for it and I'll say it that way. But basically there's two kinds: likely to be earned and not likely to be earned. Likely to be earned do count against the cap. Not likely to be earned do not count against the cap unless they happen.
Okay, that was good. The second half of that, I totally understood. So that was something that I actually did not know the answer to. So I'm very happy that you were able to clarify that. Let's see. I think you answered this on Twitter, or X, whatever we call it, but I think we should just answer it on the pod. If I can't fly into Buffalo's airport for a game, is Toronto the other best option? Flying from the West Coast, other suggestions? What did you say? I didn't see your response.
My response was Toronto's definitely an option if you have a passport and you're ready to deal with the traffic and the, getting down to Buffalo and through the bridge. But Niagara Falls is a good option, but they're very limited. I don't even think they fly anywhere to the West Coast, so that might not work. My other options are Erie and Rochester are both international airports, West Coast. They fly those, and Syracuse or Cleveland. If you want to do a 2.5 to 3 hour drive, Syracuse or Pittsburgh or Cleveland. Pittsburgh, of course, too, but that's like 4 hours.
Yeah, I would say Rochester is your best option for sure of the other options. Try to get to Buffalo. The West Coast thing, there's not a ton of direct flights from Buffalo to the West Coast, so I would imagine there's none from Rochester to the West Coast, or fewer at least. So if you're going to have to take a connection anyway, just take the connection and then go to either Buffalo or Rochester and then make the drive. I mean, from Rochester I got family in Henrietta. From Henrietta to Orchard Park is probably an hour and 20 minutes. So it's not impossible. It's longer than obviously it would be from Cheektowaga at the Buffalo airport, but not insane. You could absolutely do it.
Go ahead. I'm reading something about the bonuses that I can put it in a more succinct way before we get out of here.
Do you think this is from Jeff? Do you think you would look cooler in a full Bills or Sabres uniform, pads and all? What do you think you would look better in?
Well, for me, it'd be football. I played football my whole life, and I would say I'd look better in football gear and a helmet. Plus, I mean, I don't have like nice flowing TV hair like you, so put that football helmet on me. We're all good.
Yeah, I don't think I would look good neither, to be honest. I did play hockey growing up for a lot, so I would definitely feel much more comfortable in hockey equipment than I would in football equipment. But yeah, I would say I'd say hockey equipment. My reason for that is just I think hockey jerseys are much better looking than football jerseys. Like I think the Bills have great jerseys, right? Like I think that they're very, very clean. They look very, very nice. But I think a hockey jersey, just in general, is so much cooler than a football jersey.
So just to clarify, and I said it clunky, I said it right, but I didn't say it. I didn't speak it the right way. If you when you have a bonus that for reaching certain incentives, if the player had reached that incentive the year before, and then he does, it's likely to be earned, so it counts.
Mm-hmm.
And if not, then it's not likely to be earned. It doesn't count. That's the best way to put it. So it's based on the threshold of what the player had the previous season, if it's going to be likely or not likely to be earned, and if it winds up counting in the end against your salary cap.
So, for example, let me ask you this question. So a likely to be earned bonus would be Josh Allen throwing for 1 touchdown or more because he did it the year before. And that feels just like a very obvious way of trying to, and then unlikely to be, not likely to be earned is like if the Bills win the Super Bowl and Josh Allen is the Super Bowl MVP and throws 50 touchdowns in the regular season.
That's right.
Uh-huh.
So in that case, the first one, the likely would immediately count against the cap when he signs the deal.
Mm-hmm.
The second one would not count against the cap unless it happens.
Okay. All right.
In the following year.
Thank you for the clarification. Any other questions you want to get to? Anything you want to talk about before we take a call it a day?
I am sitting here watching this and looking up, and I'm watching, speaking of Baltimore, the Yankees, again, they're trying to go for the AL East, and it kind of sucks because they're down like 7-1 to the Orioles. And I don't know how dialed in you are to baseball. I know not that much, but even this time of year, like, do you see what's going on? Do you get into it? I know you got to be a sports director, be on top of all this kind of stuff.
No, I don't. And as a sports director, I do not think I need to be on top of it. We will get a couple people occasionally who are like, why aren't you talking about the Yankees or the Blue Jays or something like that? But I don't think that's my place, to be quite honest. And I don't love baseball. So you could have told me that the Yankees clinched the AL East 2 weeks ago, and I would have believed it. You could tell me, like, I know the Yankees are good and I know the Orioles are good, but that's the extent of it for me. Playoffs start in a couple weeks, and I will not watch a playoff game.
Here's the deal. The Yankees need 1 win to clinch the AL East. They needed 1 win last night. They lost to the Orioles. Now they're losing to the Orioles again. They have still 4 or 5 games left. They're going to play the Pirates. They're going to get that 1 win. But it'd be really nice to get that win now to get it out of the way and not worry about it. They need 1 win. And they need 2 or 3 magic numbers, 2 or 3. Magic number means either combination of wins or losses with them and the Guardians to clinch the 1 seed. And that's still like, okay, you need to do this now. So let's go out and do it. All right. Yes, I do have something before I go. Matthew Bove.
Yes.
What did you do or say to the Buffalo Bills organization to make Mr. Brightside such an anthem for this Buffalo Bills organization and team?
I made a call and I was like, hey guys, like, let's get Mr. Brightside on the playlist and let's have this played at every single game. No, I mean, it's funny because I feel like in the infancy of this podcast, we were talking about this specific song, Mr. Brightside. And if memory serves me correct, Sal did not know the song that we were referring to. For people around my age, this song is an anthem. This song will take you immediately back to a party in college or whatever it is. It's just immediately vibes. So I'm getting a little older, but I'm not that far off than the core guys of the Bills and how old they are. So if I feel that way, they feel that way. I'm sure that Mr. Brightside was playing at parties in Wyoming, in Ole Miss for Dawson Knox, in Northern Iowa for Spencer Brown, for all of these things. So like those are the guys. And then there was a video a couple months ago of all of them like doing and like singing it and dancing to it at Dawson Knox's wedding. So like, it's a song that resonates with people. They love it. Everybody knows the words to it. And I will say in the press box, you're on the field. Your vantage point is as good as anybody's in the stadium. In the press box, it's soundproof. Like, you know this, you've been up there.
Yeah.
You can hear things, but you can't like really hear it.
Right.
But when that song started playing, you could really hear it because so many people were singing it.
Did you get the rest of the press box to sing too?
No.
Okay.
I did not get the rest of the press box.
I mean, there's no cheering in the press box. I didn't know if they're singing in the press box.
But the foot taps a little bit. That's one of those songs that's just like right when you hear the first chord, you just know it, and it's just a really, really great song.
It's there's a lot of great video out there, and I know you guys at Channel 7 shot some. Was it Dom who was down in the field? I know he got some great video of it too.
My favorite I've seen 2 videos of it. AJ Feldman in Rochester
got a great shot.
Had a great shot of it down on the field, and then we had a video from actually our anchor Ed Tranch, who has Bill season tickets. He has like a big video of the entire crowd singing it from above that's gotten viewed like 50,000 times.
I haven't seen that. I'm gonna go look as soon as I'm done here. I'm gonna look at that.
So it's right on WKBW's Instagram, and that's like a really cool vantage point because in that one you can see all the fans singing it, and it's pretty sweet.
I love that. I'm gonna definitely gonna do that. Now I will tell you
that video has been viewed on our Instagram almost 300,000 times already.
Oh, it's amazing. I love it. It really is cool. It gives you a lot of vibes. I will tell you, I have a friend in Florida. I sent it to him. He happens to be a Jaguars fan. And I'm like, hey, how cool is this? He's also a Michigan fan, and he said, "Why are they copying Michigan?"
They do it at Michigan, which I found out.
Michigan? I don't know.
They do it at Michigan, which I found out yesterday.
Yep.
They do it at Missouri, which I found out yesterday. And my counterpoint to all of that is that if we don't know that they do it there, then most people don't know that they do it there, and it's not your thing. You could be the first to do it, but believe it or not, you weren't the first person to ever listen to the song Mr. Brightside. So other people should be able to enjoy it. Like if you're a Bills fan and you're listening to this podcast, I don't want to spoil anything for you, but did you know that 7 Nation Army by the White Stripes plays at other facilities and other games? It can be cool here, and I'm not like I'm just saying like this is what that guy is saying. He's saying like you can't play Mr. Brightside in Buffalo because we play it at Michigan. It's like, okay, well, did you know that they play 7 Nation Army all over the place? And nobody has ever been like, you can't play that. The only ones that I can like really think of that I immediately go to are, I think of Virginia Tech with Enter Sandman. I think of the Boston Red Sox with Sweet Caroline.
Mm-hmm.
I think of...
how about the shout song by the Buffalo Bills?
The shout song by the Buffalo Bills. Like if another team started doing that, that would be weird. But Mr. Brightside is a popular song that is listened to all the time.
I agree with you. And yeah, I mean, I when he said that to me, I'm like, oh, I guess Michigan does it. I didn't even know that was the case. Hey, speaking of viewing things, we had like some of our most viewers ever on the last podcast. So I want to say thank you to everybody. Like,
thank you.
I think in the draft, we had like a 15K view episode just on video, by the way. This is audio too, lots of downloads, of course, but thank you for everybody that's coming aboard. So very cool. But Matt, like really cool that, you know, people are coming and watching it, and we want people to subscribe. Of course, I'm still 800 away from 10,000 on YouTube. So check it out at Sal Sports on YouTube. And of course, you know, on the audio side, a very cool thing to see that, you know, people are coming aboard. And I guess that's what happens when you're winning, your team's winning, and, you know, you just, you know, you want to be a part of it, and you want to listen and soak up everything that you have to hear about it and say about it and read about it and watch about it.
Absolutely. I mean, the interest continues to get bigger and greater for the Bills. And when they're winning, people want to talk about them. When they're losing, people want to talk about them. I'll say my biggest takeaway from the first 3 weeks is I think the Bills are really good. And they've also built themselves a little bit of wiggle room that if they lose to the Ravens, the sky is not falling. It's totally fine. Like you every once in a while lose games in the NFL, especially to good teams. I think that even if you only win one of your next 3 games, you are going to be totally fine moving forward. Do not lose 3 in a row. But I think the conversation shifts. If you win 2 of these next 3 games or all 3, we're having serious conversations about are they the best team in the AFC. But, you know,
I mean, they're ranked number 1 in the power rankings in the NFL by people right now.
I know. They're very good. They're very good. They're good on both sides of the ball. They're really well coached. And there's a lot of reasons to be optimistic about this team.
All right. And then really quickly, you just said the Bills are resonating with a lot of people. Here's a little example. Yes, shameless little self kind of cool pat on the back. Look at that. That's is sweet. Tracy McGrady on the right, Vince Carter on the left, Eric Wood in the middle, and a much shorter radio guy, Sal Capaccio.
I was going to say, that's so cool. It's so cool that Vince Carter and Tracy McGrady were there. And then I also saw you at the picture of Josie Altidore,
yes.
from the U.S. soccer team, too.
Yes.
Vince Carter is the best. Vince Carter is one of my favorite basketball players
insanity.
ever, just because of what he was able to do on the court. So that's really cool.
And by the way, people asking, like, what's the connection? Bill COO Pete Gwelly used to work for and with Michael Jordan, and they're very close. And he has a lot of connections in the sports world. And it's a Monday night in Buffalo, great weather. And, hey, why not bring some stars to town?
When is Michael Jordan coming to a Bills game?
I'm wondering that too. Can I ask Pete when you bring him MJ to town? Come on,
it's going to happen, right? It's going to happen.
We'll have to see. That'll be the thing we'll have to ask him about.
One thing
he's working on red jerseys, right? Red and black jerseys right now. 15 times, I think, for the Sabres, right, this year.
One thing I do want to say. So we've got a producer at our station, John. He went to his first Bills game on Monday Night Football. And he's not from Buffalo. He was so impressed with the atmosphere. He was like, I never in a million years imagined that would be what an NFL game was like, because he was comparing it to other stadiums that he had been to. And he's like, if I've been to one, I've been to all of them. And then one of our other producers, DJ, was like, no, absolutely not. Like, you got to come to this. And he told DJ, now, I don't know how loud it was, but he was like, when the Von Miller sack happened in the fourth quarter, the place burst. I was like, the game was already sealed. Like, I can't even imagine that it was that loud. And then I also went back and watched the video from the game afterwards. Chris Fowler was like, so impressed, it seems like, by the atmosphere.
He said it was like an SEC game.
Yeah,
and he's been in a lot of SEC games.
Yeah, like, that's really cool. I mean, give yourselves a pat on the back, Bills fans, because it is very different than it is in a lot of other places in the NFL. That is absolutely true.
Thanks to Mike Robbie, our producer, once again. Download and subscribe. Throw us a nice rating and like. It's on Apple Podcasts or wherever else you get your podcasts, and of course, Sal Sports on YouTube. Thanks again. We'll talk later this week before the Bills play the Ravens.